Hi, this video is probably the first of 2 or 3 videos that's going to go over some of the policies and guidelines that Helping Hands has regarding primarily delinquent behavior and habits. We'll actually take a look at what we mean by delinquent. But just give me your attention as we cover some important policies that Helping Hands uses, guidelines that we follow. One has to do with rent. Another one has to do with unemployment and employment acquisition. Our drug testing policy, policies and rules regarding communication, and along the lines of communication, our weekly check-ins, and then some things about apartment inspection. So in this video, we'll probably just cover rent delinquency and unemployment and employment acquisition. Alrighty, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to read through what is in the resident handbook, and so that I can just emphasize certain things. So you can follow along as a resident. You can follow along with your resident handbook. Don't have the page number in front of me. So let's just look at an introduction to the section of the handbook titled Delinquency Policies and Guidelines. So introduction: Helping Hands policy and guidelines are designed to create and maintain both peace and productivity. We're not looking to put on you unnecessary burdens. What we ask of our residents, we are program based. What we ask of our residents is for the good of the community and for the good of the individual. So we need rules, we need guidelines, we need boundaries for productivity and peace. So let me start over. Helping Hands policies and guidelines are designed to create and maintain both peace and productivity by providing fair and equitable instructions, directions, and expectations. That's what these guidelines and policies are for, and they're for each of our residents. These policies and guidelines are not for burdensome obligations. They are designed to create pathways of accountability and encouragement that leads to success in assisting residents escape destructive and self-defeating decisions and lifestyles, while simultaneously building new and better lives according to God's wonderful design. So again, remember, what's our motto? Helping build better lives. How? Through the grace of God. By providing transitional housing with transformational discipleship and assistance in a community of believers. And this is all part of it. So let's define delinquency, or what we mean by delinquent, because this document's going to, or what we're going to cover, that term's going to be used. So we just want to make sure that you understand that. So delinquent is offending or failing by neglect, okay, or violation of agreements. Okay, so you as a resident, you've agreed to certain things that are our rules, that are our guidelines, our policies, and you may become delinquent in failing to follow those things either by neglect or accident, or by conscious violation of those things. So one way that delinquencies often used is in the context of payments, credit card payments, rent payments, mortgage payments, car payments, and so forth. Alrighty, so that's what we mean by delinquent. It's not necessarily a character assassination word. Delinquency can be involved in lack of character. It can be self-defeating poor habits. And that's one of the reasons why we have these policies and guidelines, is to help people that have mindsets and habits that are missing, that cause them to, that cause them to fail to be responsible, to be diligent, to be proactive, to plan ahead and act accordingly, and so forth. And so this is these things are here actually for those that lack them, to train you in the disciplines that make for prosperous and productive living if they're lacking. All right. So rent delinquency, that's what we're going to talk about. Residents, I'm reading right here. Resident rent rates are customized to address the needs and abilities of each individual. The rent paid for the apartment includes the cost of electricity, water, sewer, garbage, internet, and repairs. So before we get into the policy, we're just creating a framework of what your market rate rent could be versus what you actually are paying. So we know that rent similar, the market rate for rent similar to the apartment that you stay in is around $1,000 to $1,200. That's just for rent. And so what we're saying here is with what we call rent, technically it's not rent, but what we call rent, that includes electricity, water costs, sewer, garbage, internet, and repairs. The monthly rent as a Helping Hands resident can be as much as $950 for one apartment. Meaning that's what we reserve the right to raise it to, but it is substantially less than that for most residents, and all residents usually. In fact, that rent's not ever been that high since I've been with Helping Hands. Once the first quarter rent schedule is set for new residents, the monthly rent will increase by a minimum of $50 at the end of each yearly quarter. Okay, so there's going to be an increase. Not drawing very straight here, of $50 each quarter. Basically, a quarter is 3-month period. Okay, so once the rent schedule is set, meaning a resident will come in their first month, the rent, if any, will be set for that first month, and there may be an increase within the first 3 months, but then after that it'll flatten out to $50 rent in most cases. A given rent schedule is determined by multiple variables such as unique circumstances, earning potential, and length of stay, like how long have you been here, and will be designed in a way to allow residents to accumulate savings for independent living. So again, that's what we're after. We're after independent living. We want to position you so that you can save up enough money for a down payment for the purchase of a house, or whatever kind of deposits are necessary for a rental. Sometimes it's first and last month's rent. Sometimes it's even 3 months worth of rent down as a down payment. Okay, so again, explaining the situation with Helping Hands, what does your rent entail? Also, keep in mind now and as you stay here that we're able to provide for you affordable housing at a substantially lower than market rate because of charitable givers, because of private donations. And since we believe charity should be volunteer in nature, we have elected not to receive or solicit government money to underwrite our expenses. We don't participate in HUD, we don't receive government funding. Therefore, the needed financial support for residents is through voluntary private gifts that come from individuals, businesses, grants, and churches who want to help others. Our donors give to us because they care and want to help residents succeed and prosper in life. But in order to be good stewards, that's a big part of our policies. We want to be good stewards, faithful managers of what's been given to us. In order to be good stewards of our donors' money, we believe we must do our best to balance what our residents can pay and the amount our generous donors provide to supplement the cost of housing and residency. So that's why we have these policies. That's why we have budget training. That's why we need to know what your income and expenses are and your spending habits are to help you and to help us. Looks like we have a little repeat here. What's the total cost of a resident staying with us? The total cost for the assistance of each resident not only includes mortgage payments, repairs, maintenance, insurance, electric, water, sewer, and garbage. So we're not only talking about electric, water, sewer, and garbage for a given apartment that a resident lives in, but also what are the administrative expenses? We have to pay a mortgage on the apartment complex. Repairs come up. We've got to pay for repairs and maintenance. We've got to pay for insurance and so forth. We got operational costs of staff and office expenses. We do things like event meals and other expenses. So including the housing and related operational expenses, the per apartment cost is well beyond the rent a resident pays each month. And believe me, it's well beyond that. But we don't say that to, we don't want you to feel indebted to us. We just want you to be grateful. We want you to be, that gratefulness to motivate you to do the right thing at the right time, including paying your rent. So we and our supporters are glad to be able to offer our residents affordable housing so that each resident can focus on building a new and better life for themselves and their family. Affordable so that you can focus on, creating earning potential, building savings, healing, your family, restoring relationships with your kids and so forth. But at the same time, we expect our residents not to take for granted the opportunities this low rent affords them. One way of valuing the low rent opportunity can be demonstrated, or one way it can be demonstrated is by being a good steward of the opportunity God has given you and being on time with rent payments. Show yourself faithful in the little things so that God can reward you. We expect that you do not only honor the situation, but also that you treat your apartment rent like any other bill. For example, treat rent like a car or insurance bill that would result in the loss of your car or insurance if you were to become late or delinquent in your payment. Okay, so don't expect, okay, I'll pay my insurance, my auto insurance, my auto bill first, and then if I have any left over, I will pay my rent. No, it doesn't work that way. You need to treat it just as seriously, but that does not mean, as we'll see in other places, that you can't come to us and say, hey, I'm having trouble. I need to meet this. I need to meet this. Can you work with me? Okay. That's what we're saying here. So these expectations do not mean we're not willing to work with you if you experience a financial hardship that prevents you from paying your rent on the first of the month. What it does mean is that you need to communicate with us to inform us of your situation and to see if something can be worked out. For example, we might allow and work something out where you can make a partial payment at the first of the month and then the remaining amount in the middle of the month after another paycheck. In other words, when value, respect, and effort and communication are present between resident and staff, we will do our best to work with you and accommodate your situation. If those things are absent, then you as a resident are in danger of being told to leave. Okay? So finally, again, creating a framework, creating a paradigm, a context for your situation regarding staying at Helping Hands and rent. Finally, we value the opportunity to work with you to build a new and better life and being a launching pad for you, but it takes respectful actions and communication on the part of each resident. Respectful actions and communication. Remember, God's word is a lamp unto our feet and a light unto our path. It teaches us the right mind and heart sets. And it says, and God says in Romans chapter 13, verses 7 and 8, render therefore to all their due. Okay. The context of this previous verses has to do with taxes, has to do with money. Taxes to whom taxes are due, custom to whom customs, fear to whom fear, and that fear has to do with respect, honor to whom honor, owe no one anything. Okay? Owe no one anything except what? To love another. For he who loves another has fulfilled the law. That means I take that even as like a credit card payment. Or, if I owe, I've spent maybe $750, but my credit card payment is $80. Then I owe that $80 based on my agreement with the credit card people. That doesn't mean I'm advising credit cards, because interest on credit is very expensive. If we have a mortgage on a home, and we borrow $250,000, technically we owe $250,000, but on a given month we may owe $900. Okay, so we don't let that go. We pay our debts. So finally, we are thankful to have you with us and look forward to seeing you experience the goodness of God. Alrighty. So that took a little bit longer than I wanted to as an introduction to rent, but I think it's necessary and needed. So let's talk about rent delinquency. Again, either intended or unintended payment of your rent. Delinquencies that we're going to be talking about, such as delinquent rent payments and excessive rent debt accumulation, have historically been a reoccurring problem for Helping Hands. To eliminate the problem and develop responsible residents, again, we're after developing. This is something that develops our residents. Develop responsible residents with a sense of gratitude and honor. The following policies and procedures have been implemented. Okay, so one of the things is, number one, we expect if somebody does not, so rent is due the first weekday of the month. Okay, that may fall on a Tuesday, it may fall on a Friday, it may fall on a Monday, but that's when rent is due. Okay, if that first day of the weekday of the month passes and you haven't paid your rent, we expect that you should have told us ahead of time. You should have called the resource specialist, which is and said, hey, I can't pay my rent for thus and thus reason on the first of the month, but I can have it tomorrow or the next day. Then we say, okay, that's fine. There's a 5-day grace period. Or I don't foresee myself paying within the 5-day grace period. I'm going to need some more time. I'm going to need to talk to the executive director. Resource specialist says, okay, get with the executive director. I'll let him know that you're going to be getting with him and set up something so that you guys can come up with a plan. So that's the gist of it. Let me read this word for word. If a resident foresees an inability to pay their rent on the first weekday of the month, they must call the resource specialist at our landline 547-4212 with a notice and a reason for being late. This must be done before the end of the day of the due date. Okay, again, that's the first weekday of the month. In addition, the resident must pay the rent within 5 days of the due date or schedule a time with the executive director before the fourth weekday of the month. Okay, so if that's, if rent's due on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, you need to be in touch with the executive director before the end of Thursday, before the end of the day of Thursday. What's the purpose? To determine a satisfactory payment schedule that will not hinder an on-time rent payment for the upcoming month. Okay. During this meeting, the resident's employee status, income, expenses, spending habits, budget, training, or lack of, and any of the other contributing factors will be evaluated with the resident, and a payment plan will be established and agreed upon between executive director and resident. Okay, so a prior notice, if you're going to be tardy or delinquent in paying rent, is required. There is a penalty if it does not happen. If there is no prior notice, the resource specialist will call the given resident the following workday to determine the cause of delinquency. So again, let's say rent was due, the first weekday of the month was a Tuesday. The resource specialist will call on Wednesday saying, hey, why haven't you paid your rent, and why haven't we heard from you? If that has to be the case, then the resident will receive a $25 fine toward their rent balance. Okay, and then in that call, it will be determined if the resident can pay their rent within a 5-day grace period. Again, was it an accident? Did they forget? Did they not have transportation, and or whatever, or lost their job, unexpected bill came up, and so forth. D, if rent cannot be paid before the grace period ends, the resident must schedule a time for the executive director. So it's the same thing as what we covered in the no prior or the prior notice required. Okay, whether you call with a prior notice that you're not going to be able to pay your rent on time on the first weekday of the month, or whether we have to call you and find out that you can't pay it. If you can't pay before the fourth day of the month, weekday of the month, then you need to talk with the executive director, and it's again your responsibility to set up that appointment and to come up with a plan. Repeated delinquencies. If a resident has repeated delinquency cases of no prior notices and/or failure to pay scheduled rent or fulfill a payment plan, the following applies. If there's no prior notice, if a resident fails to give prior notice for inability to pay rent for 3 consecutive months or 4 in 1 year, the residency will be terminated. You'll be evicted. Failure to pay. If a resident fails to pay rent for 3 consecutive months or fails to fulfill an agreed rent or debt payment plan by the scheduled date for 3 consecutive time frames. When I say time frames, because again, things may be altered because of an inability to pay the full rent at the beginning of the month. So if you fail, you've set up an agreement, you've set up a payment plan, and you've failed to follow through with that, 3 consecutive time frames, the resident will be evicted and given up to 2 weeks to vacate. Part of the payment plan agreement may include new or additional budget training and accountability. That will be discussed later in further detail, which it looks like maybe right here. Let's talk a little bit about budgeting, how that incorporates into rent. A resident who is showing difficulty in consistently paying their rent on time must begin financial accountability meetings with the resource specialist. The resident must agree to share all expenses, fixed and discretionary, and income earned on daily income earned. If necessary, budget training and accountability meetings will include 1 in-person meeting and an additional over-the-phone evaluation and/or training meeting during the given week. Okay, so there's possibilities that a resident has already gone through Helping Hands budget training, but it's not being applied, still having trouble. So further budget training and accountability checkups may be required. So note, upon orientation completion, residents will meet with the resource specialist for financial budget training and accountability weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly at the resource specialist's discretion. In the case of rent delinquency, the frequency of training and accountability meetings may increase as stated above. Okay? And then finally, some people may be having trouble with rent due to employment or unemployment. If unemployment and inadequate employment is the determining factor for a resident's inability to pay rent, they must demonstrate a prayerful and determined effort to seek and acquire gainful employment with written and/or verbal reports of their efforts, means, and results for employment. Okay? The type and frequency of the reports will be determined on a case-by-case basis situation and may include demonstration of efforts to secure child care. Okay? Oftentimes, it's hard for people to work if they don't have child care, so there's 2 things that people are trying to find and secure: child care and employment simultaneously. Okay, so the family care specialist is responsible for overseeing employment acquisition efforts, and she will be walking you through that. So, all right, I think this video has gone a little bit further than I'd like, but since we're talking about employment, let me go to this next one. Nope, we'll figure that. We'll do that on another video. Alrighty, thank you for your attention. And again, if there was something that was not understood, that's what we're here for. A phone call, a text, a question, reach out to us. Alrighty, bye.